We're restructuring. Hope there's no hard feelings. You understand how business works. My name's James Morrison. I'm 63 years old, and I've spent 28 years keeping Millfield Systems operational. 28 years of arriving at 5:45 in the morning, repairing what was damaged, mentoring every new employee who entered those doors. I never took a sick day. Never complained when they asked me to work weekends. Never said no when they needed someone to stay late and ensure the network didn't fail overnight. 5 days. That's all I had remaining before my full retirement benefits kicked in. 5 days before I could leave that place with my dignity intact and my future guaranteed. 28 years and 11 months of service, and Marcus Webb just told me I was finished. He didn't even meet my eyes when he said it, just focused on his tablet screen like I was some budget item he was eliminating. The meeting room felt more cramped than usual, the LED lights humming overhead like they always did when the building got quiet. I could see through the glass panels to the workstations where people I'd mentored were busy, completely unaware that the guy who'd shown them how to repair the heating system and taught them which suppliers to trust was getting terminated. Budget reductions, Marcus continued, finally looking up. We're moving toward a more streamlined approach. Nothing personal, James. Just business. I nodded. What else could I do? Protest? Plead? I'd witnessed other men my age get removed by security for causing a disturbance. That wasn't going to be me. The termination documents were already prepared and waiting in a manila envelope. Standard procedure, final pay calculations, COBRA information, return of company equipment. I signed where they indicated. Dated everything with the same pen I'd been using for the past 4 years, the one with the Millfield logo that was beginning to fade. Badge and keys, Marcus said, extending his hand. I unclipped the ID badge from my belt, the same position it had occupied for nearly 3 decades. The plastic was worn smooth from years of scanning through card readers. My employee photo looked younger, taken back when my hair was still dark, and I believed I'd retire from this place with honor. The keys felt weightier than they should have. Master keys to every entrance in the facility, keys to the server rooms, the storage areas, the shipping dock. I'd been entrusted with everything. I placed them in Marcus's palm without speaking, collected my copy of the documents, and walked out. Past the workstations where people were already averting their gaze. Past the break room, where I'd eaten lunch at the same chair for 28 years. Past the security station where I'd signed in thousands of times. The parking lot was still. My truck started immediately, same as always. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, looking back at the facility. Something felt wrong about the whole situation, but I couldn't identify what. I built my existence around that place. Started there when I was 35, fresh off a divorce that claimed half of everything I possessed. The position wasn't glamorous. Operations management meant I was the person who repaired the plumbing when it overflowed and ensured the air conditioning worked in summer. But it was reliable work with solid benefits. And they'd promised me that if I remained loyal, they'd care for me when I aged. Millfield wasn't much back then, maybe 45 employees, 2 facilities, still trying to determine what kind of software company they wanted to become. I watched them expand, helped them grow into 4 facilities across the business district. When they needed someone to supervise the construction of the new server farm, they asked me. When the state inspectors came around asking questions about safety codes, they sent me to handle them. I trained every operations person who came after me. Showed them how to interpret the schematics, how to negotiate with vendors, how to keep everything functioning without exceeding the budget. Most of them moved on to better positions eventually. I remained. This was my place. My wife passed away 7 years ago. Cancer. The company health plan covered most of the treatments, and Marcus's predecessor allowed me to take all the time I needed for medical appointments and hospital visits. When she died, Half the office attended the funeral. They were decent people, decent company. Marcus was different when he took over 2 years ago. Younger, business degree from some prestigious university. He looked at everything like it was a challenge that needed resolving, including the people who'd been there since before he was born. Started bringing in consultants to maximize operational efficiency. Started discussing right-sizing the workforce. The warning signs were there if I'd wanted to acknowledge them. Marcus stopped greeting me when he passed me in the corridor. Stopped including me in the monthly staff meetings. When I submitted my budget proposals, they came back with questions I'd never had to answer before. Why did we need so many service contracts? Could we manage with fewer safety inspections? Wasn't I getting a little old to be climbing ladders and crawling around in mechanical rooms? I figured he was just trying to establish himself as the new leader, show everyone he was implementing changes. I'd seen it before with other supervisors. They arrive, make some noise, then settle into the routine once they realize how things actually operate. But there were other signs too. Conversations that ended when I entered a room. Meetings I wasn't invited to anymore. A new hire in operations who asked me questions about my job duties, things he shouldn't have needed to know unless someone was planning to have him replace me. I should have paid closer attention, should have asked more questions. But I was 5 days away from my pension vesting, and all I could think about was reaching the finish line. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with the termination documents spread out before me. The numbers didn't calculate the way they should have. According to my records, I had 28 years and 11 months of service. According to their paperwork, I had 28 years and 10 months, 1 month short of full retirement benefits. I pulled out my old employee handbook, the one from 12 years ago, when they revised the retirement policy. It was clear as day, 29 years of service or age 65, whichever came first, for full benefits. I was 63 with 28 years and 11 months. 5 more days, and I would have reached the 29-year mark. Then I remembered the company-wide memo Marcus had distributed just last month. I'd kept a copy because it seemed significant. Updates to the employee handbook, clarifications about retirement benefits, assurance that the company was committed to honoring all existing agreements. I found it in my filing cabinet right where I'd left it. Effective immediately, all retirement benefit calculations will be based on continuous years of service as defined in the current employee handbook. Employees approaching retirement eligibility should review their service records to ensure accuracy. I read it 3 times. Then I got out my calculator and started going through my pay stubs. Every single one going back 12 years. Holiday pay, overtime, vacation days, sick leave, everything was documented. Everything matched up to 28 years and 11 months of service as of this Friday. They'd miscalculated on purpose. Or maybe they just hoped I wouldn't notice. I thought about calling Marcus, demanding they correct the paperwork. But what was the point? He'd already made it clear that I was done. Calling him would just give him an opportunity to come up with another excuse, another reason why the rules didn't apply to my situation. I thought about getting an attorney, but attorneys cost money I didn't have. And fighting a large corporation with deep pockets was a young man's game. Then I remembered Linda Patterson. She'd worked in human resources at Millfield for 10 years before retiring last year. Sharp woman, always followed procedure, never let the company cut corners when it came to employee rights. I'd heard through the grapevine that she was doing consulting work now, helping other companies avoid the kind of legal problems that came from mistreating employees. I found her number in my old contacts and stared at it for a long time. Making that call would mean admitting that I'd been cheated. It would mean fighting back instead of just accepting what had happened and moving on. But sitting there in my kitchen looking at 28 years of pay stubs and a termination letter that didn't match the facts, I realized something had shifted inside me. I wasn't angry. I was determined. I picked up the phone and dialed. Linda answered on the second ring. Her voice was the same as I remember, direct, no nonsense, the kind of tone that made you want to tell her the truth whether you planned to or not. "James Morrison," she said before I could introduce myself. "I heard about what happened. Word travels fast in this business." I laid out everything for her. The timing of my termination, the discrepancy in the service calculation, Marcus's behavior over the past few months. She listened without interrupting, asking pointed questions about dates and documentation. When I finished, there was a long pause. "You kept all your pay stubs?" she asked. "Everyone. Company memos, policy updates, everything important. My wife always told me to keep good records." "Smart woman, James. I need you to listen carefully. What Marcus did isn't just wrong, it's illegal. Federal law protects employees from being terminated to prevent them from collecting earned benefits. But proving it requires more than just the timing. We need to show intent." She explained how these cases worked. The Department of Labor took them seriously, but they needed solid evidence documentation, a pattern of behavior, something that showed the termination wasn't just bad timing, but deliberate fraud. "Bring everything to my office Monday morning," she said. "Don't talk to anyone at Millfield. Don't post anything on social media. Don't even tell your neighbors what happened. If this goes where I think it's going, we want them to believe they got away with it." Monday morning, I drove to Linda's office with 3 boxes of paperwork, pay stubs, employee handbooks, memos, performance reviews, email printouts. 28 years of documentation organized in chronological order. She went through everything methodically, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When she got to Marcus's memo from last month, she stopped and read it twice. "This is gold," she said. "He put it in writing that service calculations should be accurate. Then he fires you with an inaccurate calculation 5 days before you hit 29 years. Either he's incompetent or he's lying. What's the difference? Incompetence gets you your job back. Lying gets you your job back, plus damages, plus a federal investigation that could shut down their entire human resources department." She explained the process. File a complaint with the Department of Labor. They'd investigate, interview witnesses, review documents. If they found evidence of deliberate benefit denial, Millfield would face serious penalties, not just fines, but potential criminal charges for the people involved. "How long does it take?" I asked. "Depends. Could be weeks, could be months. But James, you need to understand something. Once we file this complaint, there's no going back. Marcus is going to know you didn't just walk away quietly. He's going to fight back." She was right about that part. Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. Marcus's name on the caller ID. "James, I heard you've been talking to people about your termination. I hope you're not planning to do anything foolish." I didn't say anything. "Look, I get it. You're upset. But we followed company policy to the letter. Your service record shows 28 years and 10 months. I've got the documentation right here." "What documentation?" "Your hiring date January 20th, 1996. Your termination date November 15th, 2024. Simple math, James." I knew he was lying. I started at Millfield on December 20th, 1995. I had the offer letter to prove it, but Marcus was setting up his defense, trying to get me to argue with him over the phone where he could control the conversation. "I'm not looking for trouble," I said. "Good. That's good to hear. Because if someone were to file a frivolous complaint against the company, well, we'd have to defend ourselves. And defending ourselves might involve looking very closely at that person's work history, making sure they never violated any company policies, never took anything that didn't belong to them, never said anything that might have hurt the company's reputation. The threat was clear: fight back, and they'd destroy whatever was left of my reputation." I understand, I said and hung up. But I didn't understand. Not really, because what Marcus didn't know was that Linda had already filed the complaint that morning. Linda called me Wednesday evening with news that changed everything. The Department of Labor moved fast on this one, she said. They've been watching Millfield for a while. Turns out you're not the first person this happened to. She'd spoken with the investigator assigned to my case. Over the past 2 years, 3 other longtime employees at Millfield had been terminated within months of becoming eligible for full retirement benefits. All of them in their 60s. All of them with service records that had been mysteriously miscalculated. They're calling it a pattern, Linda explained. Systematic benefit denial, the kind of thing that gets companies put on federal watch lists. But there was more. The investigator had requested personnel files for all 4 terminated employees. What they found was a series of emails between Marcus and the new human resources director discussing ways to optimize the workforce and reduce long-term benefit obligations. They weren't even smart about it, Linda said. Used company email, talked about specific employees by name. Your name was mentioned 5 times in the past 2 months. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What did they say about me? That you were a legacy cost. That your pension and health care benefits would represent a significant ongoing expense. That your position could be eliminated and your responsibilities distributed among existing staff. They'd been planning this for months. While I was coming in early and staying late, while I was training new people and fixing their problems, they were figuring out how to get rid of me without paying what they owed. There's something else, Linda continued. The investigator wants to interview you Thursday morning. They're bringing someone from the criminal division. Criminal? James, when a company deliberately terminates employees to avoid paying earned benefits, that's not just a civil matter. That's fraud wire fraud. If they used electronic communications to plan it, the people involved can go to prison. Thursday morning, I sat in a conference room at the Department of Labor building downtown. 2 investigators, both younger than my son, both wearing suits that cost more than I spent on clothes in a year. They recorded everything, asked me to walk through my employment history year by year, showed me printouts of emails I'd never seen. The emails were worse than Linda had described. Marcus and the human resources director hadn't just discussed terminating me, they discussed terminating anyone who was close to retirement eligibility. They called it proactive workforce management. They had a spreadsheet with names and dates and projected savings. Mr. Morrison, one of the investigators said, based on what we've seen, we believe Millfield Systems engaged in a deliberate scheme to defraud multiple employees of earned benefits. Your case is just the most recent example. They showed me documents I'd never seen before, internal company communications about the cost of maintaining older employees, memos about renegotiating pension obligations, a presentation to the board of directors that included a slide titled, Legacy Employee Transition Strategy. My name was on that slide, along with the names of the 3 other employees who'd been terminated. We were all listed under Q4 optimization targets. We're going to need you to testify, the other investigator said. This is going to trial. Federal court. The people responsible are going to be held accountable. I thought about Marcus sitting in that meeting room, telling me it was just business, nothing personal. I thought about 28 years of getting up before sunrise, of fixing things that were broken, of believing that loyalty would be rewarded. What do you need me to do? The federal investigation moved faster than anyone expected. By the following Monday, investigators had seized Millfield's email servers and interviewed 6 current employees. By Wednesday, they'd executed a search warrant on Marcus's office and the Human Resources Department. Linda kept me updated on everything. The investigators had found more evidence Then they knew what to do with internal documents dating back 2 years showing a systematic plan to eliminate older employees, spreadsheets calculating pension savings, email threads discussing the best timing for terminations to avoid legal challenges. They kept records of everything, Linda told me over coffee Thursday morning. It's like they wanted to get caught. The plan was simple and brutal. Identify employees approaching retirement eligibility, find reasons to question their performance or necessity, terminate them just before their benefits vested, save millions in long-term costs. Marcus had presented it to the board as a financial necessity. The company was growing, but pension obligations were eating into profits. Younger employees cost less to insure and didn't require long-term benefit commitments. It was basic business math. What he hadn't counted on was someone like me keeping detailed records, or someone like Linda understanding federal employment law, or investigators who took benefit fraud seriously. Friday afternoon, Marcus called me again. This time his voice was different, higher-pitched, nervous. James, I think there's been a misunderstanding about your termination. We should talk. Work something out. What kind of misunderstanding? Your service record. We may have made an error in the calculation. If you'd be willing to come in Monday morning, we could review everything. Make sure you get what you deserve. He was panicking. The investigation was public now, mentioned in the business section of the newspaper. Millfield's stock price had dropped 12% in 2 days. The board was asking questions Marcus couldn't answer. I don't think that's necessary, I said. James, please. We've worked together for years. Let's handle this professionally. No lawyers, no government agencies, just 2 reasonable people working out a disagreement. But it was too late for reasonable. The Department of Labor had already filed charges, criminal charges, not just civil ones. Marcus was facing up to 4 years in federal prison for wire fraud and conspiracy to defraud employees of earned benefits. Monday morning, I got a call from the company's lawyer, not Marcus, but the actual company lawyer, the one they'd brought in when things got serious. Mr. Morrison, my client would like to discuss a settlement, full reinstatement of your pension benefits, health care coverage, and additional compensation for the inconvenience you experienced. How much additional compensation? We're prepared to offer $45,000, provided you agree not to pursue further legal action. I told him I'd think about it. Then I called Linda. Don't take it, she said immediately. James, they're scared. The criminal charges are just the beginning. Once this hits federal court, other employees are going to come forward. This is going to be a class action lawsuit worth millions. She was right. By Tuesday, the Department of Labor had been contacted by 7 more current and former Millfield employees who suspected their terminations or benefit calculations were fraudulent. By Thursday, it was 12. The local news picked up the story. Federal investigation targets local software company. Marcus's photo was on the front page of the business section, looking uncomfortable in a suit that suddenly seemed too big for him. I didn't have to do anything but wait. The system was working exactly the way it was supposed to work, and Marcus was about to learn what it felt like to have your future decided by someone else. Tuesday morning, I was drinking coffee and reading the newspaper when my phone rang. Linda calling earlier than usual. Turn on Channel 8, she said. Now! I found the remote and switched to the local news. Marcus Webb was being led out of the Millfield building in handcuffs, federal agents carrying boxes of documents behind him. The reporter was talking about wire fraud charges and conspiracy to defraud employees of earned benefits. Federal prosecutors alleged that Webb and Human Resources Director Sarah Chin engaged in a systematic scheme to terminate longtime employees just before they became eligible for full pension benefits, the reporter said. The alleged fraud cost affected employees hundreds of thousands of dollars in earned benefits. The camera showed Marcus stumbling slightly as the agents helped him into a federal marshal's vehicle. His face was pale, his usually perfect hair disheveled. He looked smaller than I remembered. The indictment charges Webb with 12 counts of wire fraud and conspiracy, the reporter continued. If convicted, he faces up to 60 years in federal prison. I turned off the television and sat in the quiet of my kitchen. 28 years of getting up before sunrise, of fixing things that were broken, of believing that loyalty mattered. It had mattered, just not the way I thought. Linda called back an hour later with more news. The Department of Labor had completed their investigation. 16 employees had been affected by the scheme. Total damages exceeded $1.8 million. Millfield's board had voted to terminate Marcus and Chen immediately, and had agreed to full restitution for all affected employees. Your pension is fully restored, she said, backdated to when it should have vested, plus health care benefits and additional compensation for damages. How much additional compensation? $180,000, plus your legal fees. I thought about Marcus telling me it was just business. Nothing personal, just the way things worked. 3 months later, I was back in my workshop building a cabinet for my son. The tools felt good in my hands. The smell of sawdust and the sound of wood being shaped into something useful reminded me why I'd always been good at fixing things. My pension payments had started right on schedule. The additional compensation sat in my savings account earning interest. I hadn't touched it yet, wasn't sure I needed to. After 28 years of steady work, I had everything I needed. Marcus had pleaded guilty to federal charges and been sentenced to 16 months in prison. Sarah Ching got 4 months and 2 years of probation. Millfield had been acquired by a larger company that cleaned house in the management ranks. The local newspaper had run a follow-up story about the case. Local man's complaint leads to federal investigation. They'd wanted to interview me, but I declined. I wasn't looking for attention or recognition. I just wanted what I'd earned. My son called while I was sanding the cabinet. He'd seen the news story online and wanted to make sure I was doing okay. I'm proud of you, Dad, he said, for standing up for yourself. I didn't do anything special, I told him. Just made a phone call. Sometimes that's enough. I finished the cabinet that afternoon and loaded it into my truck. My son had been asking for one for months, and I finally had the time to build it properly. Solid maple, mortise, and tenon joints, the kind of thing that would last for decades. As I drove to his house, I thought about the difference between building something and just fixing what someone else had broken. Both had their place. Both mattered. But building something new felt better,